Welcome to the Luna Holistic Podcast. I'm your host, Geneva Robbins, and every month on this podcast, we'll talk about Reiki, as well as answering your questions on all things spiritual. We are gratefully located in Calgary in Treaty 7 territory. Thank you all and welcome to the show. Hello and welcome to the Luna Holistic Podcast. My name is Geneva Robbins, and today I have Kim Starr with me. Say hi, Kim.
Hi, everybody.
Good to have you here. Thanks for joining me to talk about our topic for today, which is why do I resist self-care, which is something that we all experience. It doesn't matter how much of a Reiki master you are. I am. I find I still have moments where I resist the things that I know are going to be best for me for lots of reasons. So that's what we're going to be chatting about today. Thanks for being here, Kim.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's great. I know we talk about this a lot. So, but before we hop into our topic, we'll start with a little grounding meditation practice, our collective breath of gratitude. So, if you're listening, you can gently close your eyes. If you can't, take a moment to tune into your heart, into that spark of light inside, that star inside your heart, connected to that universal spark within the fabric of life all around you. And just take a deep breath into that space and notice the energy flowing down through your body, connecting to the earth, and feeling that supportive, nurturing energy flow back to you and into this space, sending out a ripple of gratitude for the earth and the sun and moon and all of nature in all of its forms. And on each inhale, receive back that ripple of gratitude. Inhaling gratitude and exhaling gratitude. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. Ah, lovely. Thank you. That's so good. How did that go for you?
Yeah, so great. It always is, and always just a few minutes can really shift things. So it was awesome. Thank you.
Hmm. Yeah. I think it's like a sweet little thing with our topic of resistance to self-care. That's one thing that I talk about a lot in classes, and that's also something that I try to incorporate as much as possible in my own work. My own healing work is to start small. So sometimes we get resistance to doing self-care because we think, oh, it's going to be like so much work. It's going to be so much work. It's going to take so long and it won't be worth it if I do only a tiny amount, or I won't get a change, or if I only do like a small amount of care. And that's one thing that I think is just so magical about Reiki and meditation, taking that moment to connect into this sort of vast universal life force energy that's everywhere, every time. Like it's around us all of the time. You don't even need to be trained in Reiki to connect with that energy because it is part of just how we are as beings. We have energy running through us all of the time, through our chakra system and through our ground and our feet and through the that column of light that pours in through the top of our head and our crown and around our aura. That is always happening for us all of the time, whether we're aware of it or not. But when we take a moment to turn our attention there, it's almost like it turns the energy up on our system. So just noticing each of those points of connection, I find helps us to reconnect to that like light inside. And it is like a thought away. So even just a few moments can shift things. And so sometimes that, like taking it from being a big task to like a small little brief glimmer. And, at first, just try to get like as many of those moments in as you can, like, especially on busy days, to like just take that breath. Whenever you notice that there's a pause or you're waiting for something or, like waiting for the microwave to ding or something like that while you're making dinner is like, like, okay, I'm waiting for something. I can take that minute to like recharge for me. That's kind of one of my favorite ways of like kind of just bypassing the resistance is to make it as tiny a little crumb of self-care as I can manage. And or it's like doesn't even seem like it's going to do anything. And yeah, when I do those things, it always makes a change. So, and sometimes a really big change in just like a few moments. But how about for you?
Yeah, I remember in classes you saying, like, take the pressure off. Like, it doesn't, like, I would rather you be meditating for a few minutes every day than having one huge long meditation a week. Right. And that always stuck with me because it is like so fascinating how we can place our hands together. Something as simple as like placing your hands together to your heart, and the energy just starts to move instantaneously. I love like in the small moments, just trying to get just a little bit of that in when you can, because life is so busy. And I think I agree. Part of the resistance is like, do I have the time to fit this self-care in? So yeah, I also say to my students, like, just put your hands to your heart and the energy will start to move and it will start to shift. And it just gets you in the present, I think, right?
Hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's those like trying to make it tiny and as little effort, low effort as possible. So you don't need to be in a special place. You don't need to have, equipment. You don't need to have a huge block of uninterrupted time. It's really like finding those little teeny, teeny moments. And so sometimes that alone can be a part of just like giving yourself permission, which is probably another part of it is giving yourself permission to take care of yourself, right? Especially when we are, working and taking care of others. And, maybe there's kids or elderly folks to look after or support. And so sometimes we get like really stretched thin because there are needs that need to be managed, right? Like the kids need to be fed, the dog needs to go for a walk. Somebody needs to take care of that thing that's beeping, right? Like there's just sometimes there's just a lot of like energy that happens with life. And so putting our self-care on that list seems like, oh, I don't have time. Like I have to take care of the everybody else's needs first. And sometimes there are phases in life where you do have to be like, if you've got an infant, you got to take care of the baby, right? Like, and, or somebody has to, you have to assign a person to look after the baby. But even babies like nap, they sleep. So it's like taking those moments to nurture yourself and to really like give yourself permission to nurture yourself is another thing. It's like the actual opposite of laziness. So sometimes people feel like, oh, I have to keep on working because then, somebody's going to gripe at me for resting, or, that resting is somehow not an efficient use of our time. It's not a task. And I think we are here. A big part of our work is to really support anybody who might be listening who feels like it's hard to take those moments for yourself, or you feel guilty if you take time for yourself, to really like flip that the other way around, where it's actually the most loving, kind thing you can do for all of the people that are depending on you. Because if you don't take those moments, even just the tiniest little morsel of time can shift your mood. You're just happier. Your patience goes up. You're calmer in situations. So then, what you're bringing into the busyness of your life is an atmosphere of calm, and things just magically start ticking along. People, if they're willing, they'll match that frequency of calm. And so then you're taking that self-care into sort of the vibration of your day, and it can make enormous difference to the people, especially like people who maybe have trouble regulating their own emotions. So you're kind of having to be that calm anchor. And if you're not anchored, if you're not grounded and rooted before you go into those situations, or have a moment where you can take that step back into your own self, if you do get pulled off center by the the noise and the the energy of everything. um yeah, it is really, um that moment for reset is really important. So yeah, and that's that, permission, that inner permission. Most of the time, like, usually there's nobody outside of you saying, don't you take that 5 minutes to rest, and meditate. Or I hope there isn't anybody saying that. It's usually a voice in our head that's been installed somewhere along the way, because this is a learned behavior, a learned thought pattern. And shifting that is a huge part of, I feel, our spiritual work. So, yeah. How about for you, Kim? What do you
Yeah.
notice with that?
Yeah, I have definitely had to navigate the idea that rest is productive. And it is. It's like the more that I allow my self-care, either from others or my own self-care, moments of time to rest, it's like just what you're saying. I have more calm, more energy. I'm far more productive because I'm not working from this like depleted state. And same with the messaging too. It's like there's so many different reasons why people have picked up these messages that like self-care is selfish, for example, or that like we must, even thinking about inherited like DNA and stuff. It's like we must work hard all of the time and not rest because we need to survive. But in this day and age, that's not really the case anymore. So it's kind of retraining your brain or those thought processes into understanding that rest is so valuable for your health, for your mental health, and like you said, for everybody around you. So
Mhm.
yeah, I
It
love it.
is. What's been interesting for me, because I've taken a couple of weeks off of my regular schedule, and I noticed that come up. But it's like, I don't I'm in charge of I'm the boss of me, and I don't have to take this time off. As I was coming up to the days off, I was like, well, I kind of took it off because I thought we would be moving, but we moved early, and now do I really need to take this time? And I sort of bartered with the part of me that's like, you must always work and never take a break. And sort of have this sort of my master self or my master teacher uh, come forward and sort of make a deal with that part of me that doesn't think that rest is important, or feels like everybody else comes first and you come last. So I was like, let's run an experiment over those next 2 weeks where you just let me, the master self, decide, my core, my inner being gets to decide what we do in any given moment, and we'll just track it and run it like an experiment. And as soon as I said experiment, my little inner self was like, so happy, because I've got that nerdy science part of me is like, oh yes, data we can track. Let's prove, can you prove it to me that this is a good idea, that I give you control over your own life? And what's been interesting, it's only been a week, and I've got this fancy little watch that tracks my every move and breath and heartbeat and sleep and every detail. So I could look at the, all of the biology in my body from the week before, and this only 1 week into this rest experiment. And it's, I can track it, and it's like my sleep is improved. I'm sleeping longer. My resting heart rate has dropped. My stress levels have dropped. It tracks this thing called the body batteries. Like, my body battery is like increasing. I've got more and more energy each day. And that's the numbers part. But then I've also got this, like, I feel like I have more bandwidth. I feel like I'm going into curiosity and creativity. It's been an active form of rest. So I've used that time to, like, putter around my new house and get things sorted and get boxes unpacked. And while that is still work, it feels like things that I would have pushed to later because there's other people that need my care, right? So, um, those kinds of things are tangibly moving forward. And I feel like there's space for writing, and there's space, like, so it's like I needed a few days of decompression, and now it's like curiosity and creativity are building, which I think is a sign of recharge, is when you want to make stuff, you want to build stuff, you want to participate in the living of life and start taking action on your ideas, comes from like a spontaneous and joyful space, instead of like dragging yourself to the work that you want to do, or trying to push, like this sort of push and pull energy. And it kind of comes back to this, my working theory of how to be productive is not to drive yourself and whip yourself and always go go go, but instead think of it at like gas in a gas tank. So if your energy is low, if you'd only had like 2 liters of gas in your car, you wouldn't expect to drive 500 miles on that. And you wouldn't be surprised if you ran out of gas and got stuck on the side of the road, right? Or maybe a more eco-friendly version is, the battery level on your car, your hybrid, your car, like, you need to plug it in, or your phone. Like, if you didn't plug in your phone and it like boop, 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 dies mid-call, then it wouldn't be all that much of a surprise, because you didn't fill it with energy, so then it couldn't fulfill its function. And to think that we as animal beings and energetic beings can somehow continually run on empty, or we fill ourselves up to 30% and that's all we allow ourselves to do. And then, because we drop down and then we fill up just to the barest minimum functioning, and then we drop back down, and yet we don't adjust our productivity expectations to like, oh, okay, so you can only do, if you've only got 30% battery, you can only do 30%. And actually, you probably shouldn't do 30% because then that's all of your energy. You probably should do like 10%. You should probably do less than half of whatever you've got. And so that idea of like, if your energy levels are high, then you probably can be productive and you probably start craving doing something fun and interesting, learning about things, being creative, following up on things that you want to learn about, reading. You start wanting to absorb new information. And if you're not at that stage, maybe it means that you don't have enough energy in your tank. And to, instead of beating yourself up on, well, why don't I ever get to this thing that I want to do, maybe it's like because there hasn't been enough rest in both like actual sleep, or also like active forms of rest, of things that are going to make you feel good or feel settled, so then you can use that as like a launching pad to do the next thing. I really feel like I'm just recording this podcast so I can listen to it, back to it, to remind myself why rest is really important. So for my next vacation. But that's sort of my thoughts on the energy tank thing. How does that sit with you, Kim?
Yeah, it's funny. I feel the same. I'm like, oh, yeah, I should be listening to this right now. It's great advice. But it reminded me of a couple of things. Like, one was when I don't know if you remember, Geneva, when I got my smartwatch, because I was dealing with some medical stuff. And so that my smartwatch was also tracking my stress levels. And it was so fascinating because, and at that time, like I was definitely burnt out and like some serious medical stuff happening. So a lot of stress. And my stress levels were in the red zone. And every time I would do Reiki, they would drop down into like the blue, which is like zero stress. And so it was just so like fascinating to see that unless I was like in this meditation or, kind of turning inward or receiving Reiki or being in even Reiki class, right? Like when I was in that environment, I was able to take this like stress level that of mine that from very high, intense, stress to essentially no stress at all. And so I thought, wow, so how do I create that just with every moment of my life? Like, how do I be in this space as often as I possibly can to try and really balance out, my stress levels? And so that was what I was reminded of when you were talking about your amazing watch that tells you all the data. And a lot of that for me has been just taking those moments throughout my day, taking a bit of time for myself to just, sometimes it might look like a 10-minute nap or a 15-minute nap. Sometimes it might be like, okay, I'm going to stop with all of the urgency and just read my book a little bit or do some self-healing or do something that's in like joyful, right? The other thing that you said that was a great reminder for me as well is when we went on our little like winter writing retreat and I brought like every single thing of work that I could possibly bring. I had a bag full of like 7 books. I had my computer. I had like all of my journals. And I'm like, I had all of these ideas of all of the amazing things that I was going to do. And I remember also it was freezing, freezing cold when we went and stayed at that Airbnb. And I did none of those things. I just did. I
Yeah.
received, like I was able to receive. You gave me some Reiki and we chatted a lot. And but we just kind of, for me, that was, I just relaxed. It was like that decompression uh phase that you're talking about. And then I remember when I got home, it was like, okay, I feel ready now to be creative and to like dive into like some of the work I want to do. But I couldn't get to that place until I had some of that time to decompress.
Yeah. Yeah. And how crucial that is like, that was the same where it was. And I think maybe it's just like we're in different modes of our brains sometimes when we have like plans for like, I'm going to get all this done in this time block of time. And that part of our brain doesn't actually like understand like the process and the digestion and it doesn't understand the cycle of creativity. And yeah, and so I I totally get that. Because to want to, as soon as we get a bit of time or we've taken that, like, okay, I'm gonna get out of the city, I'm gonna go to a beautiful place in nature and going to like dedicate this moment to rest. Sometimes we still have that like, and while I'm resting, I'm going to get all of these things done. And instead of resisting the rest, I think it's like putting resistance or brakes on the part of us that's like, go all of the time. Do more than you possibly can. Get as much done as possible. Make sure other people can give you credit for all of the hard work you've done, And it's like the rest is its own reward, and it is enough to do that because that is the fuel for our lives. And I really do believe, and when I've practiced this a lot, and I was like journaling this morning of like, when am I going to believe, like truly, like allow that last little thread, wispy thread of doubt to, it'll be eliminated, and maybe it's just is a thing that's serving me in some way because I keep on collecting more and more data and evidence that it is indeed true that if you pay attention to your energy levels and work to first increase your energy and to understand what that means for you, like there's all kinds of different forms of rest. So sometimes it looks like sleeping, sometimes it looks like creativity. So, like, uh, you know, making something, drawing, sculpting with Play-Doh, like just, those kinds of things where it's like you're just making things, you're just finger painting, there's no pressure other than to just be in joy. Some people recharge with dancing. Getting outside is often a pretty universal one. Going for a walk, even just taking in a view of nature, it can be a very restorative, recharging kind of thing. Spending time with people you love, like making space for social rest, right? Like being with people just to hang out, without any goal or aim, but just to have that connection. Um, and then other times it's like people feel rested when they work out. So working your body. Sometimes it's like, music or, uh, you know, meditation and Reiki are huge. I think there's a bit of like noticing the place to start if you're not sure what form of rest you need or what form of self-care you need is to think about what you've been doing a lot of. So if you have a job where you sit a lot, then you're going to need to move. your body. And you might resist meditation because it's more sitting and the body doesn't want to sit anymore. It's done enough sitting. So you might want to do something like yoga, which has a meditative component, or Tai Chi, or boxing, or running, or whatever it is. Like, get yourself moving and get your heart rate up, because it's the opposite to what you've been doing a lot. If you've been doing a lot of analytical work, so really like having to puzzle things out and troubleshoot and solve problems, you might want to do things that are completely the opposite of that, like go and putter in your garden or go shovel some snow if it happens to be snowing. you know, Massive quantities of snow randomly because it's springtime here. Giving yourself mental rest. So, or if you've been not challenging yourself enough. So if you feel like you're kind of feeling a little sluggish, and you might need to do something like puzzling, like get out a puzzle and put things together, or get an adult coloring book or a kid's coloring book and actual crayons. I highly recommend it, because then you won't put any pressure on yourself to make it perfect. Playing with Lego, those kinds of things, like, is there something that's fun, that's light, that's joyful, that brings healing into multiple levels of your being? And I kind of think we have needs for all of those, making yourself a good meal, bringing in more water, more, of these kinds of really simple, how could you show yourself kindness? How could you show the animal of your body that you respect and love it, that you care for yourself? One thing that I've noticed is I'm not generally a makeup and nail sort of person, but I've been finding a lot of joy in doing my nails. I found a whole bunch of nail polish that has just been sitting there, and it's been really fun because while you're waiting for your nails to dry, you really can't do anything other than meditate. So it's a fancy way of tricking myself into just sitting and being still, because I don't want to smudge my nails. And while I'm waiting for my nails to dry, I can just take that moment and rest. And I have to. Right? So those kinds of things can be like just little tiny nurturing things, and just even placing little reminders to take care of yourself around your house, or just even like a sticky note on your mirror with an affirmation. I really love journaling. I find when I journal, everything clicks into place, and I get to see and talk to all of these different aspects of myself. And I also get to call in my team, sort of my divine guidance, and get their perspective. And by the end of, something between 1 to 3 pages, which isn't very much and it isn't very much time, I have this sort of reflection, and I've got a better idea, this kind perspective on anything that might be bonking around in my mind, causing trouble, like old thought patterns or that kind of thing. So, one last thing, and I'm going to let you share some of your tools, Kim, is one thing I always say in Reiki class, which I think is good to remind people here, is that resistance is juicy. So, whenever we feel resistance to doing self care, that is excellent. And I applaud you for noticing your resistance to your self care, because it means that whatever you're resisting, you absolutely need to do it, because we only resist self-care when we're the on the brink of change, when we're right before a breakthrough. And because there's that little ego part of us that is afraid of change and even positive changes, and maybe especially positive changes. It is really afraid that you're going to go from known to unknown. And unknown is terrifying to that little part of us. And it doesn't matter if it's good because it doesn't know that it will be good. It doesn't know that things start going out of its control and it starts freaking out a little bit. So then you get this sort of kickback. And that is actually really, really good because it means you're changing, which is what you want. You want to change and you want to grow because that's where life is. If we don't change and we don't grow, we stagnate and we die. So, not great. So, we either grow and we change and we flourish in those changes, and we get to have changes that we choose instead of changes that are forced on us, which is less ideal. And then you have to do the work anyway and change. And so I've always found that whenever I'm resisting something that I know to be good for me, something that is joyful and nurturing and fun and will ultimately benefit me, it is the absolute thing that is going to bring the biggest change, the biggest positive leap forward. And if I allow myself to do just even a little smidgen of that, and break it down from this really big, scary thing to like, I'm just going to do 5 minutes of it. I'm just going to set a timer and I'm just going to do 20 minutes of this thing and see how I feel. And when I do those things, what I find is I always feel relief. I know it's the right thing because I feel good. And it's like, oh, I'm so glad I did that. And then I might feel resistance again. It's like, and then I go through it again. And I just like very gently tiptoe my way through into this sort of new frequency. But yeah, so if you feel resistance, celebrate it, enjoy it, allow yourself to feel the resistance fully and be gentle with yourself, be gentle with that resistor, and then very gently take that tiny little step forward because then there's growth, change, and healing on the other side of it. So that's what I got there. Kim.
Amazing. Thank you, Geneva. There you said so many things. I'm like, oh yeah. I love also the idea of like you need to kind of maybe do the opposite of what you've been doing too much of. And I think that for me, one thing that comes up a lot because I am really social and I am with people like clients all day and I do have young children. So I am with, around people a lot is like space and time. And having the awareness, I think that's been a challenge for me to even know that I needed that. And now like starting to tune in and being able to have that awareness that like, okay, is it that I need a little bit of space and time by myself to do whatever it is, right? Like it could be something like dancing or something like journaling or sleeping. It doesn't really matter. But for me, a big one is having the awareness that, okay, have I just been around people and not giving enough time to myself, which for me is like a sacred space that I need to recharge. So the awareness is a big part. And I love that you said putting little notes around the house to remind yourself, because if it's something that you're not used to, it is a practice, right? Like the self care is a practice, like learning how to nurture self and do these things and kind of step back and ask yourself, what is it that I need? And what do I require right now to fill up my own battery is definitely something that takes time. And it doesn't always happen overnight. For me, for sure, it didn't. But I also love what you said about, change. You're on the cusp of change. And I think that's so true. And discomfort is a signal that growth is happening. For my own self-care, I always think of the garden, like it's like a garden, right? So you plant these seeds, and in order for them to grow, you have to nurture them and you have to, water them and make sure they're getting enough light and make sure the soil is tended to. Like, and so that it can grow and blossom into this beautiful flower. But it's like I always do a check-in with myself. Okay, how is my garden? Like, is it dry? Have I been putting anything in? Because sometimes it feels that way. Sometimes it feels like, okay, I really haven't done very many things for myself, and I'm expending a lot of energy towards maybe supporting others, which is also, it's a tricky thing because that's fulfilling for me. I need the balance to kind of maintain my own growing garden, right? And so that's kind of been my experience. And I love doing I love all sorts of different things. And I feel like I remember you told me one time, and I've used this, having I don't okay, I feel like you said it was like having um like one of those spinning wheels, but I've used like dice, and maybe you told me dice too, where it's like write down six things if you can't decide, because some of it, some something that happens for me is like, well, I just don't know what to do. And then I spend all day trying to figure out what it is that I need to do.
Yeah.
And so it's like writing down a list of six things, rolling the dice, and whatever it lands on is what you're doing, right? Like
Yeah.
having those little tools as well, because the indecision is also that resistance piece, I think,
Mhm.
and it's connected to that. But yeah, I love just having like a list of joyful things that fills my cup and makes me feel good. And then, letting the universe decide by the roll of a dice. Like, okay, you choose for me, because I'll be here all day if it's up to me. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Or even just like you could you could have a mason jar and just write out like things that you can do just right in that moment, 5 to 20 minutes, and you just reach into the jar and you pull and you just say, I'm going to do 5 minutes of jumping jacks or whatever. And you're like, okay, that's the one we do. And you just don't question it because you didn't know before. So here's an option, right? And I really like that. Just like I use a pendulum or I like dice. I've got you can get an app for your phone where you can like populate it with like things and it'll just spin the wheel, like, like Price is Right sort of style. And whatever you land on, you do that thing. Um, and, and then it's really great because then you you don't have to, especially if you're running into decision fatigue. If you've made 1,000 decisions, you're like, I have no idea. I can't think anymore. I can't make any more choices. You don't have to. You've already pre-thought like all of these things would be good for me. So I'm going to do that. Sometimes when it lands on one and you're like, well, I don't want to do that. I want to do this instead. And then that's also totally valid. So allow yourself to like go completely the opposite direction. If it says cook a meal, it's like, I'm not cooking tonight. We're going out for dinner, like, but then it's a way of sometimes when you're given an answer, it like prompts you to know, like into your own knowing, which is really, rather than thinking our way there, you can go into tap into your heart and use that heart energy to flow you towards where you need to be. And yeah, that I find is really great for connecting to rest, doing that self-care work, which is, for people who are Reiki people, that's the fourth Reiki ideal, which is do your work honestly. And that comes in lots of flavors. It's not just meditation and Reiki, it's also all of the things that you need to do to feel well, to be recharged, to be ready and able to support another person in their healing work. In order to do your best work in Reiki for other people, you have to do your self care. It is not optional. You have to. It is written in, and it is a form of wisdom. To sort of really commit to doing that self care one thing that I think we can maybe close our very lovely session today with is just ponder. And Kim, you can think about it. You don't have to give me an answer right away, but what self care have you been resisting? So, for everybody listening, just take a minute, a breath, and see what pops up. And for me, I'll share mine. Yoga. I have been resisting doing yoga for many years. I have this deep knowing that it's exactly what my body and mind need. And yet I also find time for every other thing except that. And I will sometimes do a consistent practice. I have a consistently inconsistent practice with yoga, which I'm going to be gentle about because there's lots of resistance that is juicy in there. So, yeah, so I think I'm going to make a little commitment to myself, but I like making it accountable by saying it to others to do just a small amount of yoga every day for the next month to the next podcast. There we go. And I can check in and report back from the field. But Kim, what you don't have to share, but what popped up for you?
The first thing that popped up for me was like eating more nutritious food. I feel like because of like my busy schedule and how busy I've been just making or not, or just grabbing things that are like quick and easy. And I've been having those conversations in my head, like, you know what? One of the things that's come up a lot is like, I need to learn some really like beautiful recipes that I can make in advance for my week. But then like every Sunday, I'm like, nah, no, I think I'll do something else. But yeah, definitely adding some more nutritious food to kind of fuel me in a better way. And yeah, so maybe I can make that same commitment that I'm going to look up some recipes and figure out some really beautiful meals that will sustain my energy.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm a big fan of like green smoothies because it's like a salad in a cup. And then you know that you're getting like all of your nutrition. So all of your roughage is happening. Yeah. Anyway, there is like adding one teeny little thing or one, like I'm just going to do in even just that of like maybe making in advance isn't batch meals, maybe isn't your thing. That's maybe too much. Maybe it's like a salad, a smoothie, it's like getting more vegetables and fruits in you know, those kinds of things. It's like just one, like making it super small and easy too. So then it's like it doesn't have to represent a huge shift. It could just be like just a little morsel. And as you're doing it, you're like, see, here we are. I'm doing the thing. you know?
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Love
always say
that.
too, like with my one of the things that I talk about a lot in class is like if it feels like pressure, it's not like Reiki. That's kind of what I say because it's like it's Reiki is the opposite of pressure to me, right? Like it's like being gentle, no push, no pull, just going easy. And like you said with the meditations at the beginning, it's like it doesn't have to be an hour, it can be 3 minutes. And so it's kind of like just taking that pressure off and really allowing that ease and that flow to come in, even if it's in really small ways. Yeah.
I love that. Awesome. 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 Thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you, everyone, for listening. If you'd like some help hitting the reset button, you can absolutely book us in for Reiki. That is also a valid form of self care, as you can just lie down and let somebody else take care of you for a bit. And we also teach Reiki in our space. Kim teaches Reiki. We've got a number of other Reiki teachers that, if you want to learn how to do this Reiki stuff or learn to incorporate meditation into your day, absolutely check out our website, lunaholistic.com. And there's a bunch of meditations on there if you want to try some out. But otherwise, have a wonderful, wonderful time. Until next time, bye-bye. Thank you for joining us on the Luna Holistic Podcast. We're so grateful that you are here. If you've got a question, we'd love to hear from you. Go to lunaholistic.com/podcast and we'll answer you in an upcoming episode. Be sure to subscribe to our show on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And also please rate, because you never know where your little 5 stars will go to shine light into somebody's heart today. So thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.